This play is called Our Town. It was written by Thornton Wilder. The name of the town is Grover's Corners, New Hampshire, just across the Massachusetts line. Latitude 42 degrees, 40 minutes. Longitude 70 degrees, 37 minutes. The first act shows a day in our town. The day is May 7th, 1901. The time is just before dawn. The sky is beginning to show some streaks of light over in the east there, behind our mountain. The morning star always gets wonderful bright the minute before it has to go, doesn't it? Well, I had better show you how our town lies up here. Here is Main Street. Way back there is the railway station. Tracks go that way. Polish towns across the tracks and some Canuck families. Over there is the Congregational Church. Across the streets, Presbyterian, Methodist, Unitarian are over there. Baptist is down in the hollow by the river. Catholic Church is over beyond the tracks. Here's the town hall and post office, combined jails and the basement. Brian once made a speech from these very steps here. Along here's a row of stores, hitching posts and horse blocks in front of them. First automobile's going to come along in about 5 years. Belongs to banker Cartwright, our richest citizen, lives in the big white house up in the hill. Here's the grocery store, and here's Mr. Morgan's drugstore. Most everybody in town manages to look into those two stores once a day. Public schools over yonder, high schools still farther over. 9:15 mornings, noontimes, and 3 o'clock afternoons, the whole town can hear the yelling and screaming from the schoolyards. This is our doctor's house, Doc Gibbs. This is the back door. There's some scenery for those who think they have to have scenery. This is Mrs. Gibbs' garden. Corn, peas, beans, hollyhocks, heliotrope, and a lot of burdock. In those days, our newspaper came out twice a week. The Grover's Corners Sentinel and this Editor Webb's house. And this is Mrs. Webb's garden, just like Mrs. Gibbs, only it's got a lot of sunflowers too. Right here's big butternut tree. Nice town, you know what I mean? Nobody very remarkable ever came out of it, as far as we know. The earliest tombstones in the cemetery up there on the mountain say 1670 to 1680. They're Grovers and Cartwrights and Gibbses and Herseys. Same names as are around here now. Well, as I said, it's about dawn. The only lights on in town are in a cottage over by the tracks where a Polish mother's just had twins, and in the Joe Crowell house, where Joe Jr.'s getting up so as to deliver the paper, and in the depot where Shorty Hawkins is getting ready to flag the 5:45 for Boston. Naturally, out in the country, all around, they've been lights on for some time. What with Melkins and so on. But town people sleep late. So, another day's begun. There's Doc Gibbs coming down Main Street now, coming back from that baby case. And here's his wife coming downstairs to get breakfast. Doc Gibbs died in 1930. The new hospital's named after him. Mrs. Gibbs died first, long time ago, in fact. She went out to visit her daughter, Rebecca, who married an insurance man in Canton, Ohio, and died there. Pneumonia. But her body was brought back here. She's up in the cemetery there now, and with a whole mess of Gibbses and Herseys. She was Julia Hersey for the married Doc Gibbs in the Congregational Church over there. In our town, we like to know the facts about everybody. There is Mrs. Webb coming downstairs to get her breakfast too. That's Doc Gibbs. Got that call at 1:30 this morning. And there comes Joe Crowell Jr. delivering Mr. Webb's Sentinel.
Morning, Doc Gibbs.
Morning, Joe.
Somebody been sick, Doc?
No, just some twins born over in Polish Town.
Do you want your paper now?
Yes, I'll take it. Anything serious going on in the world since Wednesday?
Yes, sir. My school teacher, Miss Foster's getting married to a fellow over in Concord.
No, I declare. Well, how do you boys feel about that?
Well, of course, it's none of my business, but I think if it's a person that starts out to be a teacher, she ought to stay one.
Well, how's your knee, Joe?
Fine, Doc. I never think about it at all. Only like you said, it always tells me when it's going to rain.
What's it telling you today? Gonna rain?
No, sir.
You sure?
Yes, sir.
Knee ever make a mistake?
No, sir.
I want to tell you something about that boy, Joe Crowell there. Joe was awful bright. Graduated from high school here, head of his class. So he got a scholarship to Massachusetts Tech. Graduated head of his class there too. It was all wrote up in the Boston paper at that time. Going to be a great engineer, Joe was. But the war broke out. And he died in France. All that education for nothing.
Giddy up, Bessie. What's the matter with you today?
Oh, well, here comes Howie Newsom delivering the milk.
Morning, Doc.
Morning, Howie.
Somebody sick?
A pair of twins over at Mrs. Gorowski's.
Twins, eh? This town's getting bigger every year.
Is it gonna rain, Howie?
No. Fine day that'll burn through. Come on, Bessie.
Hello, Bessie.
He strokes the
How
horse.
old is she, Howie?
Going on 17. Bessie's all mixed up about the route ever since the Lockhart stopped taking their quart of milk every day. She wants to leave him a quart just the same. Keeps scolding me the whole trip.
Good morning, Howie.
Morning, Mrs. Gibbs. Doc's just coming down the street.
Is he? Seems like you're late today.
Yes, something went wrong with the separator. Don't know what 'twas. Doc.
Howie.
Howie.
Children, time to get up.
Come on, Bessie.
George, Rebecca. Everything all right, Frank?
Oh, I declare, easy as kittens.
Bacon will be ready in a minute. Sit down and drink your coffee. You can catch a couple hours sleep this morning, can't you?
Miss Wentworth's coming at 11. I guess I know what it's about, too. Her stomach ain't what it ought to be.
All told, you won't get more than 3 hours sleep. Friend Gibbs, I don't know what's going to become of you. I do wish I could get you to go away somewhere and take a rest. I think it would do you good. Emily.
Emily, time to get up. Wally, 7 o'clock.
I declare, you got to speak to George. Seems like something's come over him lately. He's no help to me at all. Can't even get him to cut me some wood.
She's sassing you?
No, he just whines. All he thinks about is that baseball. George! Rebecca! You'll be late for school. George!
George, look sharp!
Yes, Pa.
Don't you hear your mother calling you? Well, I guess I'll go upstairs and get 40 winks.
Wally, Emily, you'll be late for school. Wally, you wash yourself good or I'll come up there and do it myself.
Ma, what dress shall I wear?
Don't make a noise. Your father's been out all night and needs his sleep. I washed and ironed the blue gingham for you special.
Ma, I hate that dress.
Ah, hush up with you.
Every day I go to school dressed like a sick turkey.
Now, Rebecca, you always look very nice.
Oh, Mama, George is throwing soap at me.
I'll come up and slap the both of you. That's what I'll do.
We've got a factory in our town too. Do you hear it? Makes blankets. Cartwrights own it, and it brung him a fortune.
Children, now I won't have it. Breakfast is just as good as any other meal. And I don't have you gobbling like wolves. It'll stunt your growth. That's a fact. Put away your book, Wally.
Aw, Ma, by 10 o'clock, I gotta know all about Canada.
You know the rule as well as I do. No books at the table. As for me, I'd rather have my children healthy than bright.
I'm both, Mama. You know I am. I'm the brightest girl in school for my age. I have a wonderful memory.
Eat your breakfast.
I'm bright too when I'm looking at my stamp collection.
I'll speak to your father about it when he's rested. Seems to me 25 cents a week's enough for a boy your age. I declare I don't know how you spend it all.
I got a lot of things to buy.
Strawberry soda, that's what you spend it on.
I don't see how Rebecca comes to have so much money. She has more than $1. I've been saving it up gradual.
Well, dear, I think it's a good thing to spend some every now and then.
Mama, do you know what I love most in the world? Do you? Money.
Eat your breakfast.
Mama,
All right,
there's
Mom,
the first
I gotta hurry,
bell.
'cause I got to
Gotta
trade
hurry, I
things.
don't want any more.
Jill, bye.
Gotta hurry.
Trellises. Take me down Center Triadine, walking to Main Street, and then turn left.
Walk fast. But you don't have to run. Wally, pull up your pants at the knee. Stand up straight, Emily.
Tell Miss Foster I send her my best congratulations. Can you do that?
Yes, Mom.
You look real nice, Rebecca. Pick up your feet.
Bye.
Bye. Here, chick, 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 chick. Here, chick. No, go away, you. Go away. Here, chick, 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 chick. What's the matter with you? Fight, fight, fight. That's all you do. You don't belong to me. Where'd you come from? Oh, don't be so scared. Nobody's going to hurt you. Ah, good morning, Myrtle. How's your cold?
Well, I still get that little tickling feeling in my throat. I told Charles I didn't know as I'd go to choir practice tonight. Wouldn't be any use.
Have you tried singing over your voice?
Yes, but somehow I can't do that and stay on key. While I'm resting myself, I thought I'd string some of these beans.
Let me help you. Beans have been good this year.
I've decided to put up 40 quarts if it kills me. The children hate them. I noticed they're able to get them down all winter.
Now, Myrtle, I've got to tell you something, because if I don't tell somebody, I'll burst.
Why, Julia Gibbs.
Here, give me some of those beans. Myrtle, did one of those secondhand furniture men from Boston come to see you last Friday?
No.
Well, he called on me. First, I thought he was a patient waiting to see Dr. Gibbs, and he wormed his way into my parlor. And Myrtle Webb, he offered me $350 for Grandmother Wentworth's highboy as I'm sitting here.
Why, Julia Gibbs.
He did. That old thing. Why, it was so big I didn't know where to put it, and I almost gave it to Cousin Hester Wilcox.
Well, you're going to take it, aren't you?
I don't know.
You don't know? $350? What's come over you?
Well, if I could get the doctor to take the money and go away someplace on a real trip, I'd sell it like that. You know, Myrtle, it's been the dream of my life to see Paris, France. I don't know. Sounds crazy, I suppose. But for years I've been promising myself that if we ever had the chance.
How does the doctor feel about it?
Well, I did beat about the bush a little and said that if I got a legacy, that's the way I put it, I'd make him take me somewhere.
What did he say?
You know how he is. I haven't heard a serious word out of him since I've known him. No, he said, might make him discontented with Grover's Corners to go traipsing about Europe. Better let well enough alone, he says. Every 2 years, he makes a trip to the battlefields of the Civil War, and that's enough treat for anybody, he says.
Well, Mr. Webb just admires the way Dr. Gibbs knows everything about the Civil War. Mr. Webb's a good mind to give up Napoleon and move over to the Civil War. Only Dr. Gibbs, being one of the greatest experts in the country, just makes him despair.
It's a fact. Dr. Gibbs is never so happy as when he's at Antietam, Gettysburg. The times I've walked over those hills, Myrtle, stopping at every bush and pasting it out like we were going to buy it. Oh, good.
Well, if that secondhand man's really serious about buying it, Julia, you sell it. And then you'll get to see Paris. All right, just keep dropping hints from time to time. You know, that's how I got to see the Atlantic.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry I mentioned it. Only, it seems to me that once in your life, before you die, you ought to see a country where they don't talk in English and don't even want to.
Well, thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. Now, we're going to skip a few hours, but first we want a little more information about the town, kind of a scientific account, you might say. So I've asked Professor Willard of our state university to sketch in a few details of our past history here. Is Professor Willard here? Yes, thank you. May I introduce Professor Willard of our state university? A few brief notes. Thank you, Professor. Unfortunately, our time is limited.
Grover's Corners. Let me see. Grover's Corners lies on the old Pliocene granite of the Appalachian Range. I may say it's some of the oldest land in the world. We're very proud of that. A shelf of Devonian basalt crosses it with vestige of the Mesozoic shale and some sandstone outcroppings, but that's all more recent. 200, 300 years old. Some highly interesting fossils have been found, I may say. Unique fossils. 2 miles out of town in the Celis Peckham's cow pasture. They can be seen at the museum in our university at any time. That is, any reasonable time. Shall I read some of Professor Gruber's notes on the meteorological situation, mean precipitation, etc.?
Oof, afraid we won't have time for that, Professor. We might have a few words on the history of man here.
Yes, anthropological data. Early Amerindian stock. Cohahatchee tribes. No evidence before the 10th century of this era. Now entirely disappeared, possible traces in 3 families. Migration towards the end of the 7th century of English brachiocephalic blue-eyed stock, for the most part. Since then, some Slav and Mediterranean.
And the population, Professor Willard?
Within the town limits, 2,640.
Just a moment, Professor.
Oh yes, indeed. The population at the moment is 2,642. The postal district brings in 507 more, making the total of 3,149. Mortality and birth rates constant by McPherson's gauge, 6.032.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Professor. Well, we are all very much obliged to you, I'm sure.
Not at all, sir. Not at all.
This way, Professor. And thank you again. Now, the political and social report, Editor Webb. Oh, Mr. Webb.
He'll be here in a minute. He just cut his hand while he was eating an apple.
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Webb.
Charles, everyone's waiting.
Yeah, Mr. Webb is a publisher and editor of Grover's Corner Sentinel. That's our local paper, you know. Mr. Webb enters from his house, pulling on his coat. His finger is bound in a handkerchief.
Well, I don't have to tell you. We're run here by a board of selectmen. All males vote at the age of 21. Women vote indirect. We're lower middle class, sprinkling of professional men, 10% illiterate laborers. Politically, we're 86% Republicans, 6% Democrats, 4% socialists, rest indifferent. Religiously, we're 85% Protestants, 12% Catholics, rest indifferent.
Have you any comments, Mr. Webb?
Very ordinary town, if you ask me. Little better behaved than most. Probably a lot duller. But our young people here seem to like it well enough. 90% of them graduating from high school settle down right here to live, even when they've been away to college.
Now, is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask Editor Webb anything about the town?
Oh, yes. Is there much drinking in Grover's Corners?
Well, ma'am, I wouldn't know what you'd call much. Stay nights at the farm hands meet down at Ellery's Greeno stable and hauler some. We've got one or two town drunks, but they're always having remorses every time an evangelist comes to town. No, ma'am, I'd say liquor ain't a regular thing in the home here, except in the medicine chest. Right good for a snake bite, you know? Always was.
Is there no one in town aware of?
Oh, come forward, will you? Where we can all hear you. What were you saying?
Is there no one in town aware of social injustice and industrial inequality?
Oh, yes, everybody is something terrible. Seems like they spend most of their time talking about who's rich and who's poor. I guess we're all hunting like everybody else for a way the diligent and the sensible can rise to the top, and the lazy and the quarrelsome can sink to the bottom. But it ain't easy to find. Meanwhile, we do all we can to help those that can't help themselves, and those that can, we leave alone. Are there any other questions?
Oh, Mr. Webb, is there any culture or love of beauty in Grover's Corners?
Well, ma'am, there ain't much. Not in the sense you mean. Come to think of it, there's some girls that play the piano at high school commencement, but they ain't happy about it. No, ma'am, there isn't much culture. But maybe this is the place to tell you that we've got a lot of pleasures of a kind here. We like the sun coming up over the mountain in the morning, and we all notice a good deal about the birds. We pay a lot of attention to them. And we watch the change of the seasons. Yes, everybody knows about them. But those other things, you're right, ma'am. There ain't much. Robinson Crusoe in the Bible and Handel's Largo. We all know that. And the Whistler's Mother, those are just about as far as we go.
So I thought. Thank you, Mr. Webb.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Webb. Now, we'll go back to the town. It's early afternoon. All 2,642 have had their dinners, and all the dishes have been washed. There's an early afternoon calm in our town, a buzzing and a humming from the school buildings, only a few buggies on Main Street, the horses dozing at the hitching post. You'll remember what it's like? Doc Gibbs is in his office, tapping people and making them say, ah. Mr. Webb's cutting his lawn over there. 1 man in 10 thinks it's a privilege to push his own lawnmower. No, sir. It's later than I thought. There are the children coming home from school already.
I can't, Lois. I've got to go home and help my mother. I promise.
Emily, walk simply. Who do you think you are today?
Papa, you're terrible. 1 minute you tell me to stand up straight, and the next minute you call me names. I just don't listen to you.
Oh, golly, I never got a kiss from such a great lady before.
He goes out of sight. Emily leans over and picks some flowers by the gate of her house. George Gibbs comes careening down Main Street. He is throwing a ball up to dizzying heights and waiting to catch it again. This sometimes requires his taking 6 steps backward. He bumps into an old lady invisible to us.
Oh, excuse me, Mrs. Forrest.
You go out and play in the fields, young man. You got no business playing baseball on Main Street.
Awfully sorry, Mrs. Forrest. Hello, Emily.
Oh, hello.
You made a fine speech in class.
Well, I was really ready to make a speech about the Monroe Doctrine, but at the last minute, Miss Corcoran made me talk about the Louisiana Purchase instead. I worked an awful long time on both of them.
Gee, it's funny, Emily. From my window up there, I can just see your headlights when you're doing your homework over in your room.
Why, can you?
You certainly stick to it, don't you, Emily? I don't see how you can just sit there that long. I guess you like school.
Well, I always feel it's something you have to go through.
Yeah.
I don't mind it, really. It passes the time.
Yeah. Emily, what do you think? We might work out a kind of telegraph from your window to mine, and once in a while you could give me a kind of a hint or two about those algebra problems. I don't mean the answers, Emily. Of course not. Just some little hint.
Oh, I think hints are allowed. So, if you get stuck, George, you whistle to me, and I'll give you some hints.
Emily, you're just naturally bright, I guess.
I figure it's just the way a person's born.
Yeah, but you see, I want to be a farmer, and my Uncle Luke says whenever I'm ready, I can just come over and work on his farm. If I'm any good, I can just gradually have it.
You mean the house and everything?
Yeah, well, thanks. I better be going out to the baseball field. Thanks for the talk, Emily. Good afternoon, Miss Webb. Well, so long, Emily.
So long, George.
Good afternoon, George.
Mama, do you want help stringing these beans for winter?
Yes, come help me. These beans. George let himself have a real conversation, didn't he? Why, he's grown up. How old would George be?
I don't know.
Let's see. He must be almost 16.
Mama, I made a speech in class today, and I was very good.
You must recite it for your father at supper. What was it about?
The Louisiana Purchase. It was like silk off a spool. I'm going to make speeches all my life. Mama, are these big enough?
Try and get them a little bigger if you can.
Mama, will you answer me a question? Serious?
Seriously, dear, not serious.
Seriously, will you?
Of course I will.
Mama, am I good looking?
Yes, of course you are. All my children have good features. I'd be ashamed if they hadn't.
Oh, Mama, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, am I pretty?
I've already told you, yes. Now that's enough of that. You have a nice, young, pretty face. I never heard of such foolishness.
Oh, Mama, you never tell us the truth about anything.
I'm telling you the truth.
Mama, were you pretty?
Yes, I was. I was the prettiest girl in town next to Mammy Cartwright.
But Mama, you've got to say something about me. Am I pretty enough to get anybody, to get people interested in me?
Emily, you make me tired. Now stop it. You're pretty enough for all normal purposes. Come along now and bring that bowl with you.
Oh, Mama, you're no help at all.
Thank you. Thank you. That'll do. We'll have to interrupt again here. Thank you, Mrs. Webb. Thank you, Emily. There are some more things we want to explore about this town. I think this is a good time to tell you that the Cartwright interests have just begun building a new bank in Grover's Corners. Had to go to Vermont for the marble, sorry to say. And they've asked a friend of mine what they should put in the cornerstone for people to dig up 1,000 years from now. For people to dig up. Of course, they put in a copy of the New York Times and a copy of Mr. Webb's Sentinel. We're kind of interested in this because some scientific fellas have found a way of painting all that reading matter with a silicate glue, that'll make it keep 1,000, 2,000 years. We're putting in a Bible and the Constitution of the United States and a copy of William Shakespeare's plays. What do you say, folks? What do you think? You know, Babylon once had 2 million people in it. And all we know about them is the names of the kings and some copies of wheat contracts and contracts for sale of slaves. Yet every night, all those families sat down to supper, and the father came home from his work, and the smoke went up the chimney, same as here. And even in Greece and in Rome, all we know about real life of people is what we can piece together out of the joking poems and the comedies they wrote for theater back then. So, I'm going to have a copy of this play put in the cornerstone, and the people of 1,000 years will now know a few simple facts about us. More than the Treaty of Versailles and the Limburg flight. You see what I mean? So, people 1,000 years from now, this is the way we were in the provinces of North, of New York, of the beginning of the 20th century. This is the way we were in our growing up, in our marrying, in our living, and in our dying. A choir partially concealed in the orchestra pits has begun singing "Blessed Be the Tie That Binds." Simon Simpson stands directing them. Well, good deal of time's gone by. It's evening. You can hear a quiet practice going on in the congregational church. The children are at home doing their schoolwork. The day's running down like a tired clock.
All right. Now look here, everybody. Music come into the world to give pleasure. Softer, softer. Get it out of your heads that music's only good when it's loud. You leave loudness to the Methodists. You couldn't beat them even if you wanted to. Oh, now again, tenors.
Emily.
Hello.
Hello.
I can't work at all. The moonlight's so terrible.
Emily, did you get the third problem?
Which?
The third.
Why, yes, George. That's the easiest of them all.
I don't see it. Emily, can you give me a hint?
I'll tell you one thing. The answer's in yards.
In yards? What do you mean?
In square yards.
Oh. Square yards.
Yes, George, don't you see?
Yeah.
In square yards of wallpaper.
Wallpaper. I see. Thanks a lot, Emily.
You're welcome. My, isn't the moonlight terrible? And choir practice going on? I think if you hold your breath, you can hear the train all the way to Kentucky. Hear it?
Huh. Well, what do you know?
Well, I guess I better go back and try to work.
Good night, Emily, and thanks.
Good night, George.
Before I forget it, how many of you will be able to come in Tuesday afternoon to sing at Fred Hersey's wedding? Show your hands. That'll be fine. That'll be right nice. We'll do the same music we did for Jane Trowbridge's last month. Now we'll do Art Thou Weary? Art Thou Languid? It's a question, ladies and gentlemen. Make it talk. Ready?
George, can you come down here for a minute?
Yes, Pa.
Make yourself comfortable, George. I'll only keep you a minute. George, how old are you?
I'm 16, almost 17.
What do you want to do after school's over?
You know, Pa, I want to be a farmer on Uncle Luke's farm.
You'll be willing, will you, to get up early and milk and feed the stock, and you'll be able to hoe and hay all day?
Sure, I will. What do you mean, Pa?
Well, George, while I was sitting in my office today, I heard a funny sound. And what do you think it was? It was your mother chopping wood. There, you see your mother getting up early, cooking meals all day long, washing and ironing, and still she has to go out in the backyard and chop wood. Well, I suppose she just got tired of asking you. She just, gave up and decided it was a lot easier to just do it herself. And you eat her meals, and you put on the clothes that she keeps nice for you, and you run off and you play baseball. Like she's some hired girl we keep around the house, but that we don't like very much. Well, I knew all I had to do was call your attention to it. Now, here's a handkerchief, son. George, I've decided to raise your spending money 25 cents a week. Not, of course, for chopping wood for your mother, because that's a present that you give her. But because you're getting older. And I imagine there are a lot of things you might find to do with it.
Thanks, Pa.
Well, let's see. Tomorrow is your payday. You can count on it. Probably Rebecca will feel like she ought to have some more, too. I wonder what could have happened to your mother. Choir practice was never this late before.
It's only 8:30, Pa.
Oh, I don't even know why she's in that old choir. She hasn't any more voice than an old crow, traipsing around the streets this hour of night. Well, it's just about time you retired, don't you think?
Yes, Pa.
Good night, Martha. Good night, Mr. Foster.
Oh, Mr. Webb, I know he'll want to put it in the paper.
My, it's late.
Good night, Irma.
Real nice choir practice, wasn't it? Myrtle Webb, look at the moon, will you? Potato weather for sure.
Naturally, I didn't want to say a word about it in front of those others, but now we're alone. Really, it's the worst scandal that ever was in this town.
What?
Simon Stimson.
Now, Luella.
But Julia, to have the organist of a church drink and drunk year after year. You know, he was drunk tonight.
Now, Luella, we all know about Mr. Stimson, and we all know about the troubles he's been through. And Dr. Ferguson knows it too. And if Dr. Ferguson keeps him on there in his job, the only thing the rest of us can do is not to notice it.
Not to notice it? But it's getting worse.
No, it isn't, Luella. It's getting better. I've been in choir twice as long as you have. It doesn't happen anywhere near so often. I hate to go to bed on a night like this. I better hurry. Those children will be sitting up till all hours. Good night, Luella.
Can you get home safe, Luella?
It's as bright as day. I can see Mr. Soames scowling at the window now. You'd think we'd been to a dance the way the menfolk carry on.
Well, we had a real good time.
You're late enough.
Why, Frank, it ain't any later than usual.
And you're stopping at the corner to gossip with a lot of old hens.
Now, Frank, don't be grouchy. Come out and smell the heliotrope in the moonlight. Isn't that wonderful? What did you do all the time that I was away?
Oh, I read, as usual. What were you girls gossiping about tonight?
Well, believe me, Frank, there is something to gossip about.
Simon Stimson far gone, was he?
Worst I've ever seen him. Haul that in, Frank. Dr. Ferguson can't forgive him forever.
I guess I know more about Simon Stimson's affairs than anybody in this town. Some people ain't made for small town life. I don't know how it'll end. But there's nothing we can do but just leave it alone. Now, come on and get in.
No, not yet. Frank, I'm worried about you.
What are you worried about?
I think it's my duty to make plans for you to get a real rest and change. And if I get that legacy, well, I'm going to insist on it.
Julia, there's no sense in going over that again.
Frank, you're just unreasonable.
Come on, Julia, it's getting late. First thing you know, you'll catch a cold. I gave George a piece of my mind tonight. I reckon you'll have your wood chopped for a while anyway. No, start getting upstairs.
Oh, dear. There's always so many things to pick up, seems like. You know, Frank, Mrs. Fairchild always locks her front door every night. All those people up that part of town do.
Well, they're all getting citified. That's the trouble with them. They haven't got anything fit to burgle, and everybody knows it.
Get out, Rebecca. There's only room for one at this window. You're always spoiling everything.
Well, let me look a minute.
Use your own window.
I did, but there's no moon there. George, do you know what I think? Do you? I think maybe the moon's getting nearer and nearer, and there'll be a big explosion.
Rebecca, you don't know anything. If the moon were getting near, the guy that sits up all night with telescopes would see it first, and they'd tell about it, and it'd be in the newspapers.
George, is the moon shining on South America, Canada, and half the whole world?
Well, probably is.
"9:30. Most of the lights are out. No? There's Constable Warren trying a few doors on Main Street. And here comes Editor Webb, after putting his newspapers to bed."
Good evening, Bill.
Evening, Mr. Webb.
Quite a moon.
Yep.
All quiet tonight?
Simon Stimson is rolling around a little. Just saw his wife moving out to hunt him, so I looked the other way. There he is now.
Simon Stimson comes down Main Street from the left, only a trace of unsteadiness in his walk.
Good evening, Simon. Town seems to have settled down for the night pretty well.
Simon Stimson comes up to him and pauses a moment, stares at him, swaying slightly.
Good evening. Yes, most of the town settled down for the night, Simon. I guess we better do the same. Can I walk along a ways with you?
Simon Stimson continues on his way without a word and disappears into the night.
Good night.
I don't know how that's going to end, Mr. Webb.
Well, he seemed to pick trouble, and one thing after another. Oh, Bill, you see my boy smoking cigarettes? Just give him a word, will you? He thinks a lot of you, Bill.
I don't think he smokes no cigarettes, Mr. Webb. Leastways, not 2 or 3 a year.
I hope not. Well, good night, Bill.
Good night, Mr. Webb.
Who's that up there? Is that you, Myrtle?
No, it's me, Papa.
Why aren't you in bed?
I don't know. I just can't sleep yet, Papa. The moonlight's so wonderful. And the smell of Mrs. Gibbs' heliotrope. Can you smell it?
Yes. Having any troubles on your mind? Have you, Emily?
Troubles, Papa? No.
Well, enjoy yourself, but don't let your mother catch you. Good night, Emily.
Good night, Papa.
I never told you about that letter Jane Crowfoot got from her minister when she was sick. He wrote Jane a letter, and on the envelope, the address was like this. It said, Jane Crowfoot, the Crowfoot Farm, Grover's Corners, Sutton County, New Hampshire, United States of America.
What's funny about that?
No, but listen, it's not finished. The United States of America, continent of North America, Western Hemisphere, the Earth, the solar system, the universe, the mind of God. That's what it said on the envelope.
What do you know?
And the postman brought it just the same.
What do you know?
Well, that's the end of the first act, friends. You can go and smoke now. Those that smoke.
We'll now have a 5-minute break before we continue Act 2.
Well, 3 years have gone by. Yes, the sun's come up over 1,000 times. Summers and winters have cracked the mountains a little bit more, and the rains have brought down some of the dirt. Some babies that weren't even born before have begun talking regular sentences already. And a number of people who thought they were right young and spry have noticed that they can't bound up a flight of stairs like they used to, without their heart fluttering a little. All that can happen in 1,000 days. Nature's been pushing and contriving in other ways too. A number of young people fell in love and got married. Yes, the mountain got a bit away, a few fractions of an inch. Millions of gallons of water went by the mill. And there, a new home was set up under a roof. Almost everybody in the world gets married. You know what I mean? In our town, there aren't hardly any exceptions. Most everybody in the world climbs into their graves married. The first act was called The Daily Life. This act is called Love and Marriage. There's another act coming after this. I reckon you can guess what that's about. So, it's 3 years later. It's 1904. It's July 7th, just after high school commencement. That's the time most of our young people jump up and get married. As soon as they've passed their last examinations in solid geometry and Cicero's orations, looks like they suddenly feel themselves fit to be married. It's early morning. Only this time it's been raining. It's been pouring and thundering. Mrs. Gibbs' garden and Mrs. Webb's here, drenched. All those bean poles and tea vines drenched. Oh, yesterday over there on Main Street, the rain looked like curtains being blown down. May begin any moment. Well, there you can hear the 5:45 for Boston. And there's Mrs. Gibbs and Mrs. Webb come down to make breakfast, just as though we're an ordinary day. I don't have to point out to the women in my audience that those ladies, both of those ladies, cooked 3 meals a day. One of them for 20 years, the other for 40. And no summer vacation. They brought up 2 children apiece, wash, clean the house, and never a nervous breakdown. It's like what one of those Middle West poets said. You've got to love life to have life. And you've got to have life to love life. It's what they call a vicious circle.
Get you up, Bessie.
Here comes Howie Newsom delivering the milk, and there's Cy Crowell delivering the papers like his brother before him.
Morning, Howie.
Morning, Cy. Anything in the papers I ought to know?
Nothing much, except for we're losing about the best baseball pitcher Grover's Corners ever had, Judge Gibbs.
Reckon he is.
He could hit and run the bases, too.
Yep, mighty fine ball player. Whoa, Bessie. I guess I can stop and talk if I've got a mind to.
I don't see how he could give up a thing like that just to go and get married. Would you, Howie?
Can't tell, Si. Never had no talent that way.
Constable Warren enters. They exchange good mornings.
You're up early, Bill.
Seeing if there's anything I can do to prevent a flood. River's been rising all night.
Si Crow's all worked up here about George Gibbs retiring from baseball.
Yes, sir. That's the way it goes. Back in '84, we had a player, Si. Even good as George Gibbs couldn't touch him. Name of Hank Todd. Went down to Maine to become a parson. Wonderful ball player. Howie, how does the weather look to you?
Oh, it ain't bad. Think maybe it'll clear up for good.
Constable Warren and Cy Crowell continue on their way. Howie Newsom brings them up first to Mrs. Gibbs' house. She meets him by the trellis.
Good morning, Howie. Do you think it's going to rain again?
Morning, Mrs. Gibbs. It rains so heavy, I think maybe it'll clear up.
Certainly hope it will.
How much did you want today?
I'm going to have a house full of relations, Howie. Looks to me like I'll need 3 of milk and 2 of cream.
My wife says to tell you we both We both hope they'll be very happy, Mrs. Gibbs. No, they will.
Thanks a lot, Howie. Tell your wife I hope she gets there for the wedding.
Yes, she'll be there. She'll be there if she can. Morning, Mrs. Webb.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Newsom. I told you 4 quarts of milk, but I hope you can spare me another.
Oh, yes, ma'am. And the 2 of cream.
Will it start raining again, Mr. Newsom?
Well, just saying to Mrs. Gibbs is how it might lighten up. Mrs. Newsom told me to tell you is how we hope they'll both be very happy, Mrs. Webb. No, they will.
Thank you. And thank Mrs. Newsom. And we're counting on seeing you at the wedding.
Yes, Mrs. Webb. We hope to get there. Couldn't miss that. Come on, Bessie.
Well, Oma, day has come. You're losing one of your chicks.
Frank Gibbs, don't you say another word. I feel like crying every minute. Sit down and drink your coffee.
The groom's up shaving himself. Only there ain't an awful lot to shave. Whistling and singing like he's glad to leave us. Every now and then he says, I do, to the mirror. But it don't sound convincing to me.
I declare, Frank, I don't know how he'll get along. I've arranged his clothes and seen to it he's put warm things on. Frank, they're too young. Emily won't think of such things. He'll catch his death of cold within a week.
Yeah, I was remembering my wedding morning, Julia.
Now don't start that, Frank Gibbs.
I was the scaredest young feller in the state of New Hampshire. I thought I'd make a mistake for sure. And when I saw you coming down the aisle, I thought you were the prettiest girl that I had ever seen. But the trouble was, I'd never seen you before. There I was in the Congregational Church marrying a total stranger.
And how do you think I felt? Frank, weddings are perfectly awful things. Farces, that's what they are. Here, I made something for you.
Why, Julia, French toast? Oh.
Tain't hard to make, and I had to do something.
Well, how did you sleep last night, Julia?
Well, I heard a lot of the hour struck off.
Yes. I get a shock every time I think of George setting out to be a family man. That great gangling thing. I tell you, Julia, there's nothing more terrifying in the world as a son. The relation between a father and a son is the darndest awkwardest.
Well, mother and daughter's no picnic, I tell you.
Well, they'll have a lot of troubles, I suppose. But that's none of our business. Everybody has a right to their own troubles.
Yes, people are meant to go through life 2 by 2. Tain't natural to be lonesome.
Julia, do you know one of the things I was scared of when I married you?
Go along with you.
I was afraid we wouldn't have material for conversation more than lasts us a few weeks. Yeah, I was afraid that we'd run out and eat our meals in silence. That's a fact. Well, you and I have been conversing for 20 years now without any noticeable barren spots.
Well, good weather, bad weather. Tain't but very choice, but I always find something to say. Did you hear Rebecca stirring around upstairs?
No. It's the only day of the year that Rebecca hasn't been managing everybody's business up there. She's hiding in her room. I got the impression she's crying.
Oh, Lord's sakes. This has got to stop. Rebecca! Rebecca! Come and get your breakfast.
Good morning, everybody. Only 5 more hours to live.
George Gibbs. George Gibbs, where are you going?
Just stepping across the grass to see my girl.
Now, George, you put on your overshoes. It's raining torrents. You don't go out of this house without you're prepared for it.
Ma, it's just a step.
George, you'll catch your death of cold and cough all through the service.
George, just do as your mother tells you.
Dr.
From
Gibbs,
tomorrow, sorry.
Dr.
From
Gibbs is
tomorrow
upstairs.
on, you can kill yourself in all weathers, but while you're in my house, you'll live wisely, thank you. Maybe Mrs. Webb isn't used to callers at 7 in the morning. Here, take a cup of coffee first.
Be back in a minute. Good morning, Mother Webb.
Goodness, you frightened me. Now, George, you can come in a minute out of the wet, but you know I can't ask you in.
Well, why not?
George, you know as well as I do. The groom can't see the bride on the wedding day, not until he sees her in church.
That's just a superstition. Good morning, Mr. Webb.
Good morning, George.
Mr. Webb, you don't believe in that superstition, do you?
There's a lot of common sense in some superstitions, George.
Millions have followed it, George, and you don't want to be the first to fly in the face of custom.
How's Emily?
She isn't wake up yet. I haven't heard a sound out of her.
Emily's asleep?
No wonder. We were up to all hours sewing and packing. Now I'll tell you what I'll do. You sit down here a minute with Mr. Webb and drink this cup of coffee. And I'll go upstairs and see if she doesn't want to come down and surprise you. There's some bacon too, but don't be long about it.
Well, George, how are you?
Oh, fine. I'm fine. Mr. Webb, what sense could there be in a superstition like that?
Well, you see, on her wedding morning, a girl's head's apt to be full of clothes and one thing and another. Don't you think that's probably it?
Yes, never thought of it like that.
A girl's apt to be mighty nervous on her wedding day.
I wish a fellow could get married without all of that marching up and down.
Every man that's ever lived has felt that way about it, George, but it hasn't been any use. It's the women folk who've built up weddings, my boy. For a while now, the women have it all on their own. Man looks pretty small at a wedding, George. All those good women standing shoulder to shoulder, making sure the knot's tied in a mighty public way.
But you believe in it, don't you, Mr. Webb?
Oh, yes. Don't you misunderstand me, my boy. Marriage is a wonderful thing. Wonderful thing. And don't you forget that, George.
No, sir. Mr. Webb, how old were you when you got married?
Well, you see, I'd been to college and I'd taken a little time to get settled. But Mrs. Webb, she wasn't much older than what Emily is. Oh, age hasn't much to do with it, George. Not compared with other things.
Well, what were you going to say, Mr. Webb?
Oh, I don't know. Was I going to say something? George, I was thinking the other night of some advice my father gave me when I got married. Charles, he said, Charles, start out early showing who's boss, he said. Best thing to do is give an order, even if it doesn't make sense, just so she'll learn to obey. And he said, if anything about your wife irritates you, a conversation or anything, just get up and leave the house. That'll make it clear to her, he said. And oh yes, he said never, never let your wife know about how much money you have. Never.
Well, Mr. Webb, I don't think I could.
So I took the opposite of my father's advice, and I've been happy ever since. And let that be a lesson to you, George. Never to ask advice on personal matters. George, are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
Wait, what?
Are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
Oh, Uncle Luke's never been much interested, but I thought.
A book came into my office the other day, George, on the philo system of raising chickens. I want you to read it. I'm thinking of beginning in a small way in the backyard and going to put an incubator in the cellar.
Charles, are you talking about that old incubator again? I thought you'd be talking about something worthwhile.
Well, Myrtle, if you want to give the boy some good advice, I'll go upstairs and leave you alone with him.
George, Emily's got to come downstairs and eat her breakfast. She sends you her love, but she doesn't want to lay eyes on you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Myrtle, I guess you don't know about that old superstition.
What do you mean, Charles?
Says the caveman, no bridegroom should see his father-in-law on the day of the wedding or near it. Now remember that.
Thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. Webb. Now I have to interrupt again here. You see, we want to know how all this began, this wedding, this plan to spend a lifetime together. I'm awfully interested in how big things like that begin. You know how it is. You're 21 or 22 when you make some decisions, then whoosh, you're 70. You've been a lawyer for 50 years, and that white-haired lady at your side has eaten over 50,000 meals with you. How do such things begin? George and Emily are going to show you now the conversation they had when they first knew that, well, as the saying goes, that they were meant for one another. But before they do that, I want you to try and remember what it was like to have been very young, and particularly the days when you were first in love, when you were like a person sleepwalking and you didn't quite see the street you were in, and didn't quite hear everything that was said to you. You're just a little bit crazy. Will you remember that, please? Now, they'll be coming out of high school at 3 o'clock. George has just been elected president of the junior class, and as it's June, that means he'll be president of the senior class all next year. And Emily's just been elected secretary and treasurer. I don't have to tell you how important that is. He places a board across the back of 2 chairs, which he makes from Gibbs' family table. Yep, there they are, coming down Main Street now.
I can't, Louise. I've got to go home. Goodbye. Oh, Ernestine, can you come over tonight and do Latin? Isn't that Cicero the worst thing? Tell your mother you have to. Goodbye. Goodbye, Helen. Goodbye, Fred.
Can I carry your books home for you, Emily?
Thank you. It isn't far.
Excuse me a minute, Emily. Say, Bob, if I'm a little late, start practice anyway. And give Herb some long high ones.
Goodbye, Lizzie.
Goodbye, Lizzie. I'm awfully glad you're elected too, Emily.
Thank you.
Emily, why... Are you mad at me?
I'm not mad at you.
You've been treating me so funny lately.
Well, since you asked me, I might as well say it right out. George. Oh, goodbye, Miss Corcoran.
Goodbye, Miss Corcoran. What is it?
I don't like the whole change that's come over you in the last year. I'm sorry if that's hurt your feelings, but I've got to tell the truth and shame the devil.
A change? What do you mean?
Well, up to a year ago, I used to like you a lot, and I used to watch you as you did everything, because we'd been friends so long. And then you began spending all your time at baseball, and you never stopped to talk to anybody anymore. Not even your own family you didn't. And George, it's a fact. You've got awful conceited and stuck up, and all the girls say so. They may not say it to your face, but that's what they say behind your back. And it hurts me to hear them say it, but I've got to agree with them a little. I'm sorry if it hurt your feelings, but I can't be sorry I said it.
I'm glad you said it, Emily. I never thought that such a thing was happening to me. I guess it's hard for a fellow to not have faults creep into his character.
I always expect a man to be perfect, and I think he should be.
Oh, I don't think it's possible to be perfect, Emily.
Well, my father is, and as far as I can see, your father is. There's no reason on earth why you shouldn't be too.
Well, I feel it's the other way around. That men aren't naturally good, but girls are.
Well, you might as well know right now that I'm not perfect. It's not as easy for a girl to be perfect as a man, because we girls are more nervous. Now I'm sorry I said all that about you. I don't know what made me say it.
Emily.
Now I see it's not the truth at all, and I suddenly feel that it isn't important anyway.
Emily, would you like an ice cream soda or something before you go home?
Well, thank you. I would.
Hello, Stu. How are you? Good afternoon, Miss Locum.
Yes, here I'll get to play Mr. Morgan. Character change. Hello, George. Hello, Emily. What do you have? By Emily Webb. What have you been crying about?
She's just got an awful scare, Mr. Morgan. She's almost got run over by that hardware store wagon, and everybody says that Tom Huckins drives like a crazy man.
Well, now, you take a drink of water, Emily. You look all shook up, I'll tell you. You've got to look both ways before you cross Main Street these days. Gets worse every year. What do you have?
I'll have a strawberry phosphate. Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
No. Emily, have an ice cream soda with me. 2 strawberry ice cream sodas, Mr. Morgan.
2 strawberry ice cream sodas. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There are 125 horses in Grover's Corners the minute I'm talking to you. State inspector was in here yesterday, and now they're bringing in these automobiles. The best thing to do is just stay home. Why, I can remember when a dog could go to sleep all day in the middle of Main Street and nothing come along to disturb him. There you are. Enjoy him. Yes, Mrs. Ellis, what can I do for you?
They're so expensive.
No, don't you think of that. We're celebrating our election. And then, do you know what else I'm celebrating?
No.
I'm celebrating because I've got a friend who tells me all the things that ought to be told to me.
George, please don't think of that. I don't know why I said it. It's not true.
No, Emily, you stick to it. I'm glad you spoke to me like you did. But you'll see, I'm going to change so quick. You bet I'm going to change. And Emily, I want to ask you a favor.
What?
Emily, if I go away to agriculture college next year, will you write to me once in a while?
I certainly will. I certainly will, George. It certainly seems like being 3 years away, you get out of touch with things. Maybe letters from Grover's Corners wouldn't be so interesting after a while. Grover's Corners isn't a very important place when you think of all New Hampshire, but I think it's a very nice town.
The day wouldn't come when I wouldn't want to know everything that's happening here. I know that's true.
Well, I'll try to make my letters interesting.
You know, Emily, whenever I meet a farmer, I ask him if he thinks it's important to go to agriculture school to be a good farmer.
Why, George?
Yeah, and some of them say it's even a waste of time. You can get all of those things out of like pamphlets the government sends out, and Uncle Luke's getting old. He's all ready for me to start, taking in his farm tomorrow if I could.
My.
And like you said, being gone all the time in other places and meeting other people. Gosh, if anything like that could happen, I don't want to go away. I guess new people aren't better than old ones, and I'll bet they almost never are. Emily, I feel that you're as good a friend as I got. I don't need to go and meet all those new people in other towns.
But George, maybe it's very important for you to go and learn all about that cattle judging and soils and those things. Of course, I don't know.
Emily, I'm going to make up my mind now. I won't go. I'll tell Pa about it tonight.
Why, George, I don't see why you have to decide right now. It's a whole year away.
Emily, I'm glad you spoke to me about that. That fault is in my character. What you said was right. But there was one thing wrong in it. And that was when you said that for a year I wasn't noticing people. And you, for instance, why, you say you were watching me when I did everything. I was doing the same about you all the time. Why, sure, I always thought about you as one of the chief people I thought about. I always made sure where you were sitting on the bleachers and who you were with. And for 3 days now, I've been trying to walk home with you. But something's always gotten in the way. Yesterday, I was standing over against the wall waiting for you, and you walked home with Miss Corcoran.
George, life's awful funny. How could I have known that? Why, I thought...
Listen, Emily, I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to agricultural school. I think that once you found a person that you're very fond of, I mean, a person who's fond of you too, likes you enough to be interested in your character, well, I think that's just as important as college is, and even more so. That's what I think.
I think it's awfully important too.
Emily.
Yes, George?
Emily, if I do improve and make a big change, would you be... I mean, could you be...
I am now. I always have been.
So I guess this is an important talk that we're having.
Yes. Yes.
Wait just a minute and I'll walk you home. Mr. Morgan, I'll have to go home and get the money to pay you for this. It'll only take me a minute.
What's that? George Gibbs, do you mean to tell me you...
Yes, but I had my reasons, Mr. Morgan. Look, here's my gold watch. Just keep it until I come back with the money.
That's all right. Keep your watch. I'll trust you.
I'll be back in 5 minutes.
I'll trust you in 10 years, George. Not a day over. Got all over your shock, Emily?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Morgan. It was nothing.
I'm ready.
Well, now we're ready to get on with the wedding. There are a lot of things that can be said about a wedding. There are a lot of thoughts that go on during a wedding. We can't get them all into one wedding, naturally, and especially not into a wedding at Grover's Corners, where they're awfully plain and short. In this wedding, I play the minister. That gives me the right to say a few more things about it. For a while now, the play gets pretty serious. You see, some churches say that marriage is a sacrament. I don't quite know what that means, but I can guess. Like Mrs. Gibbs said a few minutes ago, people were made to live 2 by 2. This is a good wedding. But people are so put together that even at a good wedding, there's a lot of confusion way down deep in people's minds, and we thought that ought to be put in our play too. The real hero of the scene isn't on the stage at all. And you know who that is. It's like what one of those European fellas said, every child born into the world is its nature to attempt to make a perfect human being. Well, we've seen nature pushing and contriving for some time now. We all know that nature's interested in quantity, but I think she's interested in quality too. That's why I'm in the ministry. And don't forget all the other witnesses at this wedding, the ancestors, millions of them. Most of them set out to live 2 by 2 also. Millions of them. Well, that's all my sermon. It wasn't very long. Mrs. Gibbs sits in the front row, the first seat on the aisle. The right section next to her are Rebecca and Dr. Gibbs. Across the aisle, Mr. Webb and Mrs. Webb. A small choir takes its place facing the audience under the stained glass window. Mrs. Webb, on the way to her place, turns back and speaks to the audience.
I don't know why on earth I should be crying. I suppose there's to cry about. It came over me at breakfast this morning. There was Emily eating her as she's done for 17 years, and now she's going to off tea house. I suppose that's it. And Emily, she suddenly said, I can't eat another mouthful. She put her head down on the table and she cried. Oh, I've got to say it. Something downright cruel about sending our girls out into marriage this way. I hope some of her girlfriends have told her a thing or two. It's cruel, I know, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I went into it blind as a bat myself. The whole world's wrong. That's what's the matter. There they come.
Hey, George! George! George, yo! Look at him, fellas. He looks scared to death. Yow, George! Don't look so innocent, you old geezer. We know what you're thinking. Don't disgrace the team, big boy. Woohoo!
All right. That's enough out of you, Missy. That's enough of that. There used to be an awful lot of kind of thing at weddings in the old days, Rome and later. We're more civilized now. So they say. The choir starts singing Love Divine, all love excelling. George has reached the stage. He stares at the congregation a moment, then takes a few steps of withdrawal toward the right proscenium pillar. His mother from the right row seems to have felt his confusion. She leaves her seat and comes down the aisle quickly to him.
George, what's the matter?
Ma, I don't want to grow old. Why's everyone pushing me so?
What, George? You wanted it.
No, Ma, listen to me.
No, George. You're a man now.
Listen, Ma, the last time I asked you, all I want to do is to be a fella.
George, if anyone should hear you, now stop. I'm ashamed of you.
What? Well, where's Emily?
Oh, George, you gave me such a turn.
Cheer up, Ma, I'm getting married.
Let me catch my breath a minute.
Now, Ma, you save Thursday nights. Emily and I are coming over to dinner every Thursday night. You'll see, Ma. What are you crying for? Come on, we've got to get ready for this.
In the meantime, Emily is in white and wearing her wedding veil, has come through the audience and mounted onto the stage. She too draws back, frightened. When she sees the congregation in the church, the choir begins, Blessed be the tie that binds.
I never felt so alone in my whole life. And George over there, looking so... I hate him. I wish I were dead. Papa! Papa!
Emily, now don't get upset.
But Papa, I don't want to get married.
Shh, Emily, everything's all right.
Why can't I stay for a while just as I am? Let's go away.
No, Emily. Now stop and think a minute.
Don't you remember that you used to say? All the time you used to say. All the time. that I was your girl. There must be lots of places we can go to. I'll work for you. I could keep house.
You mustn't think of such things. You're just nervous, Emily. George, will you come here a minute? Why, you're marrying the best young fellow in the world. George is a fine fellow.
But Papa...
I'm giving away my daughter, George. Do you think you can take care of her?
Mr. Webb, I want to. I want to try. Emily, I'm going to do my best. I love you, Emily. I need you.
Well, if you love me, help me. All I want is someone to love me.
I will, Emily. Emily, I'll try.
And I mean forever. Do you hear? Forever and ever.
Come, they're waiting for us. Now you'll be all right. Come quick.
Do you, George, take this woman, Emily, to be your wedded wife? Mrs. Soames has been sitting in the last row of the congregation. She now turns to her neighbors and speaks in a shrill voice. Her chatter drowns out the rest of the clergyman's words.
Lovely wedding. Loveliest wedding I've ever seen. Oh, I do love a good wedding, don't you? Doesn't she make a lovely bride?
I do.
Do you, Emily, take this man, George, to be your wedded husband?
Oh, don't know when I've seen such a lovely wedding. But I always cry. Don't know why it is, but I always cry. I just like to see young people happy, don't you? I think it's lovely.
You know, I've married over 200 couples in my day. Do I believe in it? I don't know. Emma marries N, millions of them. The cottage, the go-kart, the Sunday afternoon drives in the Ford, the first rheumatism, the grandchildren, the second rheumatism, the deathbed, the reading of the will. Once in 1,000 times, it's interesting. Well, let's have Mendelssohn's Wedding March.
Nice wedding. I'm sure they'll be happy. I always say happiness. That's the greatest thing. The important thing is to be happy.
Well, that's all the second act, folks. 10-minute intermission. This time 9 years have gone by, friends. Summer 1913. Gradual changes in Grover's Corners. Horses are getting rarer, farmers coming into town in Fords. Everybody locks their house doors now at night. Ain't been any burglars in town yet, but everybody's heard about them. You'd be surprised, though, on the whole, things don't change much around here. This is certainly an important part of Grover's Corners. It's on a hilltop, a windy hilltop. Lots of sky, lots of clouds, often lots of sun and moon and stars. You come up here on a fine afternoon and you can see a range of hills, awful blue they are, up there by Lake Sunapee and Lake Winnipesaukee. And way up, if you got a glass, and you could see the White Mountains and Mount Washington, where North Conway and Conway is. And of course, our favorite mountain, Mount McNucks, right here, and all these towns to lie around it. Joffrey and East, Joffrey and Peterborough and Dublin. There, quite a ways down, is Grover's Corners. Yes, beautiful spot up here, mountain laurel and lilacs. I often wonder why people like to be buried in Woodlawn and Brooklyn when they might pass the same time up here in New Hampshire. Over there, all the old stones, 1670, 1680. Strong-minded people come along to be independent. Summer people walk around there laughing at funny words on the tombstones. It don't do any harm. And genealogists come up from Boston, get paid by city people for looking up their ancestors. They want to make sure they're daughters of the American Revolution and the Mayflower. Well, I guess that don't do any harm either. Wherever you come near the human race, there's layers and layers of nonsense. Over there are some Civil War veterans, iron flags on their graves. New Hampshire boys had a notion that the Union ought to be kept together, though they'd never seen more than 50 miles of it themselves. All they knew was the name, friends. The United States of America. The United States of America. And they went and died about it. This here is the new part of the cemetery. Here's your friend, Mrs. Gibbs, and let me see. Here's Mr. Simpson, organist at the Congregational Church, and Mrs. Soames, who enjoyed the wedding, so you remember? Oh, and a lot of others, and Editor Webb's boy. Wallace Hugh's appendix burst while he was on a Boy Scout trip to Crawford Notch. Yes, an awful lot of sorrow has sort of quieted down up here. People just wild with grief have brought their relatives up to this hill. We all know how it is. And then time, and sunny days, and rainy days, and snow. We're all glad they're in a beautiful place up here ourselves when our fit's over. Now, there are some things we all know, but we don't take them out and look at them very often. We all know that something is eternal. Something is eternal, and it ain't houses, it ain't names, and it ain't earth, and it ain't even the stars. Everybody knows in their bones that something is eternal. And that something has to do with human beings. All the greatest people ever lived have been telling us that for 5,000 years, and yet you'd be surprised how people are always losing hold of it. There's something way down deep that's eternal about every human being. You know as well as I do that the dead don't stay interested in us, living people, for very long. Gradually, they lose hold of the earth, in the ambitions they had, and the pleasures they had, and the things they suffered, and the people they loved. They get weaned away from the earth. Well, that's the way I put it, weaned away. And they stay here while the earth part of them burns away, burns out. And all the time they slowly get indifferent to what's going on in Grover's Corners. They're waiting. They're waiting for something that they feel is coming. Something important and great. Aren't they waiting for the eternal part in them to come out clear? Some of the things they're going to say will maybe hurt your feelings, but that's the way it is. Mother and daughter, husband and wife, enemy and enemy, money and miser, all those terribly important things kind of grow pale around here. And what's left when memory's gone and your identity? Mrs. Smith? Well, there are some living people. There's Joe Started, our undertaker, supervising a new made grave. And here comes Grover's Corner's boy that left town to go out west.
Good afternoon, Joe Stoddard.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Let me see now. Do I know you?
I'm Sam Craig.
Gracious sakes alive. Of all people, I should have known you'd be back for the funeral. You've been away a long time, Sam.
Yes, I've been away over 12 years now, I think. I'm in business out in Buffalo now, Joe, but I was in the East when I got news of my cousin's death, so I thought I'd combine things a little and come and see the old home. You look well.
Yes, can't complain. Very sad our journey today, Samuel.
Yes.
Yes. I always say I hate to supervise when a young person is taken. They'll be here in a few minutes now. Had to come here early today. My son's supervising at home.
Why, look. It's old Farmer McCarty's gravestone. You know, I used to do chores for him after school. He had that lumbago.
Yes. We brought Farmer McCarty here a number of years ago now.
Why, here's my Aunt Julia's gravestone. You know, I'd forgotten that she'd... Yeah, of course.
Yes. Doc Gibbs lost his wife 2-3 years ago, about this time. And today's another pretty bad blow for him, too.
That's my sister Carrie's boy, Sam Craig.
I'm always uncomfortable when they are around.
Simon.
They choose their own verses much, Joe.
No, not usual. Mostly the Berev pick a verse.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like Aunt Julia. There aren't many of those Hersey sisters left now. Let me see. Where are... You know, I wanted to look at my father's and mother's.
Over there, with the Craigs. Avenue F.
Simon Stimson. Oh, he was an organist at church, wasn't he? He drank a lot, he used to say.
Nobody was supposed to know about it. He'd seen a peck of trouble. His own life, you know.
Oh, did he?
Hung himself in the attic. They tried to hush it up, but of course, it got around. He chose his own epitaph. You can see it there. It ain't a verse exactly.
Well, it's just some notes of music. What is it?
Oh, I wouldn't know. It was wrote up in the Boston paper at the time.
Joe, what did she die of?
Who?
My cousin.
Oh, didn't you know? Had some trouble bringing a baby into the world. 'Twas her second, though. There's a little boy about 4 years old.
The grave's gonna be over there?
Yes. There ain't much more room over here among the Gibbs. Though, they're opening up a whole new Gibbs section over there by Avenue B. You'll excuse me now. I see they're coming.
Who is it, Julia?
My daughter-in-law, Emily Webb.
Well, I declare, the road up here must have been awfully muddy. What did she die of, Julia?
In childbirth.
Childbirth. Forgotten all about that. My, wasn't life awful and wonderful?
Wonderful, was it?
Simon, now remember.
I remember Emily's wedding. Wasn't it a lovely wedding? I remember her reading the class poem at graduation exercises. Emily was one of the brightest girls ever graduated from high school. I'd heard Principal Wilkins say so many times about after that. I called on them a few times at the new farm, just before I died. Perfectly beautiful farm. It's on the same road where we lived.
Suddenly, Emily appears from among the umbrellas. She's wearing a white dress. Her hair is drawn, back tied by a white ribbon like a little girl. She comes slowly, gazing wonderingly at the end. A little dazed, she stops halfway and smiles faintly. After looking at the mourners for a moment, she walks slowly to the vacant chair beside Mrs. Gibbs and sits down.
Hello.
Hello, Emily.
Hello, Mother Gibbs.
Emily?
Hello. It's raining.
Yes. They'll be gone soon, dear. Just rest yourself.
It seems thousands and thousands of years since Papa remembered that was my favorite hymn. Oh, I'd wish I'd been here a long time. I don't like being new here. How do you do, Mr. Stimson?
How do you do, Emily?
Emily continues to look about her with a wondering smile, as though to shut out from her mind the thought of the funeral company. She starts speaking to Mrs. Gibbs with a touch of nervousness.
Mother Gibbs, George and I made that farm into the best place you ever saw. We thought of you all the time. We wanted to show you the new barn and a great long cement drinking fountain for the stock. We bought that out of the money you left us.
I did?
Don't you remember, Mother Gibbs? The legacy you left us? Why, it was over $350.
Yes, Emily.
Well, there's a patent device on the drinking fountain so that it never overflows, Mother Gibbs, and it never sinks below a certain mark they have there. It's fine. It won't be the same to George without me, but it's a lovely farm. Live people don't understand, do they?
No, dear, not very much.
They're sort of shut up in little boxes, aren't they? I feel as though I knew them last 1,000 years. My boy is spending the day at Mrs. Carter's. Oh, Mr. Carter, my little boy is spending the day at your house. He loves it there. Mother Gibbs, we have a Ford, too. Never gives any trouble. I don't drive, though. Mother Gibbs, when does this feeling go away of being one of them? How long does it?
Shh, dear. Just wait and be patient.
I know. Look, they're finished. They're going.
Shh.
The umbrellas leave the stage. Dr. Gibbs has come over to his wife's grave and stands over it a moment. Emily looks up at his face. Mrs. Gibbs does not raise her eyes.
Look, Father Gibbs is bringing some of my flowers to you. He looks just like George, doesn't he? Oh, Mother Gibbs, I never realized how troubled and how in the dark live persons are. Look at him. I loved him so. From morning till night, that's all they are. Troubled. But Mother Gibbs, one can go back. One can go back there again, into living. I feel it. I know it. Why, just then for a moment I was thinking about the farm, and for a minute I was there, and my baby was on my lap as plain as day.
Yes, of course you can.
I can go back there and live all those days over again. Why not?
All I can say, Emily, is don't.
But it's true, isn't it? I can go and live back there again.
Yes, some have tried, but they soon come back here.
Don't do it, Emily.
Emily, don't. It's not what you think it'll be.
But I won't live over a sad day. I'll choose a happy one. I'll choose the day I first knew I loved George. Why should that be painful?
You not only live it, but you watch yourself living it.
Yes?
And as you watch it, you see the thing that they, down there, never know. You see the future. You know what's going to happen afterwards.
But is that painful? Why?
That's not only the reason why you shouldn't do it, Emily. When you've been here longer, you'll see that our life here is to forget all that and think only of what's ahead and be ready for what's ahead. When you've been here longer, you'll understand.
But Mother Gibbs, how can I ever forget that life? It's all I know. It's all I had.
Emily, it isn't wise. Really, it isn't.
But it's a thing I must know for myself. I'll choose a happy day anyway.
No. At least choose an unimportant day. Choose the least important day in your life. It will be important enough.
Then it can't be since I was married or since the baby was born. I can choose a birthday at least, can't I? I choose my 12th birthday.
All right. February 11th, 1899, a Tuesday. Do you want any special time of day?
Oh, I want the whole day.
We'll begin at dawn. You remember it had been snowing for several days, but it had stopped the night before, and they had begun clearing the roads. The sun's coming up.
There's Main Street. Why, that's Mr. Morgan's drugstore before he changed it. And there's the livery stable.
Yes, it's 1899. This is 14 years ago.
Oh, that's the town I knew as a little girl. And look, there's the old white fence that used to be around our house. Oh, I'd forgotten that. Oh, I love it so. Are they inside?
Yes, your mother will be coming downstairs in a minute to make breakfast.
Will she?
Well, and you remember, your father had been away for several days. He came back on the early morning train.
No.
He'd been back to his college to make his speech in Western New York at Clinton.
Look, there's Howie Newsome. There's our policeman. But he's dead. He died.
Whoa, Bessie. Bessie. Morning, Bill.
Morning, Howie.
You're up early.
Been rescuing a party. Darn near froze to death. Down by the Polish town there. Got drunk and lay out in the snowdrifts. Thought he was in bed when I shook him.
Why, there's Joe Crowell.
Good morning, Mr. Warren. Morning, Howie.
Children, Wally, Emily, time to get up.
Mama, I'm here. Oh, how young Mama looks. I didn't know Mama was ever that young.
You can come and dress by the kitchen fire if you like, but hurry. Good morning, Mr. Newsome. It's cold.
10 below by my barn, Mrs. Webb.
Think of it. Keep yourself wrapped up.
Mama, I can't find my blue hair ribbon anywhere.
Just open your eyes, dear. That's all. I laid it out for you special on the dresser there. If it were a snake, it'd bite you.
Yes. Yes.
Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Mr. Webb. You're up early.
Yes, just been back to my old college in New York State. Been any trouble here?
Well, I was called up this morning to rescue Polish fella. Darn near froze to death he was.
You must get it in the paper.
Twasn't much.
Papa.
Good morning.
How did it go, Charles?
Oh, fine, I guess. I told him a few things. Everything all right here?
Yes, can't think of anything that's happened special. Been right cold. Howie Newsom says it's 10 below over his barn.
Yes, well, it's colder than that at Hamilton College. Students' ears are falling off. It ain't Christian. Paper have any mistakes in it?
None that I noticed. Coffee's ready when you want it. Charles, don't forget it's Emily's birthday. Did you remember to get her something?
Yes, got something in here. Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
Don't interrupt her now, Charles. You can see her at breakfast. She's slow enough as it is. Hurry up, children. It's 7 o'clock. Now, I don't want to call you again.
I can't bear it. They're so young and beautiful. Why did they ever have to get old? Mama, I'm here. I'm grown up. I love you all. Everything. I can't look at everything hard enough.
She crosses.
Good morning, Mama.
Well, now, dear, a very happy birthday to my girl and many happy returns. There are some surprises waiting for you on the kitchen table.
Oh, Mama, you shouldn't have. I can't.
But birthday or no birthday, I want you to eat your breakfast good and slow. I want you to grow up and be good, strong girl. That in the blue is from your Aunt Carrie. And I reckon you can guess who bought you the postcard album. I found it on the doorstep when I brought in the mail. George Gibbs must have come over in the cold pretty early. Right nice of him.
Oh, George, I'd forgotten that.
Chew that bacon good and slow. It'll help keep you warm on a cold day.
Oh, Mama, just look at me 1 minute as though you really saw me. Mama, 14 years have gone by. I'm dead. You're a grandmother, Mama. I married George Gibbs, Mama. Wally's dead, too. Mama, his appendix burst on a camping trip to North Conway. We felt just terrible about it. Don't you remember? But just for a moment now, we're all together. Mama, just for a moment, we're happy. Let's look at one another.
That in the yellow paper is something I found in the attic amongst your grandmother's things. You're old enough to wear it now, and I thought you'd like it.
This is from you. Why, Mama, it's just lovely, and it's just what I wanted. It's beautiful.
Well, I hope you'd liked it. Hunted all over. Your Aunt Nora couldn't find one in Concord, so I had to send all the way to Boston. Wally has something for you, too. He made a manual training class, and he's very proud of it. Be sure you make a big fuss about it. Your father has a surprise for you, too. Don't know what it is myself. Shh, here he comes.
Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
I can't go on. It goes so fast. We don't have time to look at one another. I didn't realize. So all that was going on and we never noticed. Take me back up the hill to my grave. But first, wait. One more look. Goodbye. Goodbye, world. Goodbye, Grover's Corners. Mama and Papa. Goodbye to clocks ticking and Mama's sunflowers and food and coffee and new iron dresses and hot baths and sleeping and waking up. Oh, Earth, you're too wonderful to anybody to realize you. Do human beings ever realize life while they live it? Every minute?
No. The saints and the poets, maybe they do some.
I'm ready to go back.
Were you happy?
No, I should have listened to you. That's all human beings are. Just blind people.
Look, it's clearing up. The stars are coming out.
Oh, Mr. Stimson, I should have listened to them.
Yes. And now you know. Now you know. That's what it was to be alive, to move around in a cloud of ignorance, to go up and down, trampling on the feelings of those about you, to spend and waste time as though you had 1,000,000 years, to be always at the mercy of one self-centered passion or another. Now you know. That's the happy existence you wanted to go back to. Ignorance and blindness.
Simon Stimson, that ain't the whole truth, and you know it. Emily, look at that star. Forget its name.
Here's one of them coming.
Mother Gibbs, it's George.
Shh, dear. Just rest yourself.
It's George.
George sinks to his knees, then falls full length at Emily's feet.
Goodness, that's no way to behave. He ought to be home.
Mother Gibbs.
Yes, Emily?
They don't understand, do they?
No, dear. They don't understand.
Most everybody's asleep in Grover's Corners. There are a few lights on. Shorty Hawkins, down at the depot, has just watched the Albany train go by. And at the livery stable, somebody's setting up late and talking. Yes, it's clearing up. There are the stars doing their old crisscross journeys in the sky. Scholars haven't settled the matter yet, but they seem to think that there are no living beings up there, just chalk or fire. Only this one is straining away all the time to make something of itself. The strain's so bad that every 16 hours, everybody lies down and gets rest. Well, it's 12:47 in Grover's Corners. You get a good rest too. Good night.